Good Monday morning and welcome to another episode of Coding in AL. And today we are going to look at the field class property. When I started coding in AL, this is one concept that really didn't, it confused me because I was new to it. It was a new strange syntax because of the big names, Flowfield, Flowfilter, because when you define a field, there is a property that you can define known as the field class. You can either say that this field is normal, which is the default, or it's a flow field or a flow filter, and this is what we are going to look at today. So if you want to learn more about it, please stay tuned.
Hii ni Tech na Msangi ya jishinde.com.
Okay, when you talk about flow fields, they display the result of the calculation defined in the CalcFormula property. For example, the account field in the general ledger account table shows the balance of the account and is calculated as the sum of the net amount fields for all general journal entries in the account. Let's move forward swiftly. Come on. So, unlike the traditional databases, Flowfields, come on, my shortcuts are not working today. Flowfields increase performance in activities such as calculating the balance of your customers. In traditional database systems, these involve a series of access and calculations before a result is available. By using Flowfields, the result is immediately available. For instance, in traditional DBs, if we wanted to get maybe the sum of, let's say the sum, if we are working with customers, we'll say maybe name and then address from customer. This is the query that you run. You send a query to the DB, maybe where customer number is equals to whichever value that you have got, maybe from the user input. Maybe this is a variable that is being passed into the system. So if you wanted to get the sum, you could say maybe select sum and you say the sum of amount from, I don't know, whichever table. Let's say from customer ledgers, where now the customer number is equals to the variable that is being passed by the system, and then you finally state as the total sum, maybe total sum. So this is the traditional way of getting entries in one query, because you wanted to display a report maybe in a table or a page, and for you to get this sum, you need to add another query that will go and fetch into these details of this specific customer. And that is how we use the traditional databases to get such values or to do reporting. It was a bit hectic. Maybe I used this formula. I don't know how the traditional databases are operating at the moment, but this is what Flowfields is solving for us. We don't need to go through this hassle again. Let me just remove my tradition here and comment this, and we move forward. We say that they are not physical fields, so they are not stored in the databases. They are a description of a calculation and allocation for the result to be displayed, because the information in Flowfields exists only at runtime. Values in Flowfields are automatically initiated to 0. To update a Flowfield, you use the CalcFields function. If the Flowfield is the direct source expression of a control of a page, the Flowfield is automatically calculated when the page is displayed. If you are displaying a Flowfield on the page, it is automatically calculated. But if you have, if you want your Flowfield to, you want to get it in your AL code, like you want to do a calculation within the code from a flow field, you need to call either the calc fields or maybe probably the set auto calc fields when you are querying your code. So but the calc field is the one that is mostly used to repopulate the field, because this is not a physical field. You need to trigger the system to do that particular calculation and display it in your system. And then the flow field, now we have different data types. You could have the sum. Okay, you could have the sum, which can only have either decimal integer, big integer, or duration, and it will give you the sum of a specified set in a column or a table. And I needed to do this. I always forget to do this, to uncomment. Okay, so the sum will have this, and then the average is the same. It will give you the average, and then the exist is a boolean. So the average and sum can give you either of these options, but the exist can only return a boolean to indicate whether any record exists in a specified table. You want to see if it exists, and then the count, as usual, will count. Minimum will give you the minimum, maximum the maximum, and the lookup will give you the lookup of any other column in the table. And again, now the flow field is accompanied by a very interesting field here. When now, for instance, you're doing the sum of entries, we are talking of customer ledgers, but you only want to get the sum within the month of April, you will use the flow filter now to define that particular filter. And once the flow filter has been populated with that filter, it will limit the sum to that particular value. So a user may want to limit calculations to include only those values in a column that have some specific properties. For example, a user may want the sum only of amounts of customer entries that are entered in April. This is possible if the application has been designed using flow filter fields in connection with the flow fields. For example, if a flow field contains the total of customer entries, then you can use a flow filter to see the total for a single month or a range of months. And we can look at maybe the pictorial description or representation of what a flow filter does. You have this table with ordinary fields, those are normal fields. You have a flow filter, and then you have flow fields. This is the first flow field. It has a calculation formula. The first flow field has a calculation formula for table 1. So this, it does the calculation, it passes through this filter that has been injected by the flow filter, and then gives you the result of a flow field. Same for table B and table D. So this table 1 is one table, but it has got information from other tables, and then it comes with all these calculations that flow filters can be used to limit the range. So you have everything. You get the sum, the average, and you can also filter whichever range you want, and it makes it very easy for you to get those values in your application. So for that, we need now to do an example, to create an example of flow fields. As usual, we will use the table snippet, and then we'll say the field class example, field class table. So a table at least should have one normal field. It can't go without a normal field, basically. So this one, we can call it the entry number. Entry number, it will be an integer that will be auto incremented. We don't want to be filling it, and if it's auto increment, I believe the editable should be false. So that is the first field on our table, and this will be the primary key. So the primary key here will be, the primary key will be entry number. it will be entry number, and we are done there. We don't need all these triggers on delete, on modify, on insert. We don't need it to simplify our table as much as possible, and I believe we don't even need any variable declaration. So we only have the fields and the keys, and we can maybe specify a caption that is more descriptive. We'll say fill class table. That makes it better. The first field is entry number, so, and it's a normal field. We want to create now a flow field. No, we start with a flow filter, so that when we create a flow field, we'll limit it to the flow filter. So the second field that we'll create in our T field snippet, and when we say the ID is 2, and we want to get the customer balance. Okay, we said we'll have flow filter, so, and we want to use in this case we don't want we want to use the date filter, so we'll call it the date filter. It's a convention to call a flow filter with a filter, document filter, date filter. It's a good convention because you already know that this is the type of the field that you want to define. So in the properties, you need to define the property as flow filter. This, you have already told it that, oh my, you field, you'll only be a flow filter, you don't need data classification. So it means we are not creating you in the database, you're just a field here for us, for our display, but in the database you don't exist. And then you're done with that by just saying that this is the field. You need to specify the type, it's date or decimal or whichever. You can also have a field that is a table relation, maybe table relation to customers. Maybe we can do another field. I get ideas while doing videos. Let's say customer number. It won't make sense because we can, it will make sense. Customer number, and then we'll call it code of type 20. Then it will also be a flow filter. You get it? So we have the customer, but now it will have a table relation with the table customer. Yes. Now our third field, the fourth field, not the third, the fourth field will be, use the T field snippet, will be now the sum. Let me say the balance. Let me say the balance of all customers. I'm assuming that this table, we just want to get the total balance. The balance, let's just call it the balance. It will be a decimal. It's also a virtual field. We don't need the data classification, but we need the field class, which will be a flow field. After defining a flow field, you need to specify the calc formula. That's when we specify the calc formula. We said we have the options of sum, average, count, minimum, maximum exists, but today we just want to use the sum. So the sum of what? The table, let's say detailed customer ledger entry dot amount. So for this balance, we only want the sum of the detailed customer ledger entry dot amount. It will give us the sum of this table. What is the total sum? And then we have another field here, field number 5. It will be the fifth field will be what? Let me use the snippet to ease my work. T field. The fifth field will be the net balance. The net, we want to limit the balance to a specific date. So in this field class, we'll say that the field class is a flow field again, and the calc formula will be the sum of, again, the detailed customer ledger entry dot amount. You get? Where now we put a condition. Okay, so where posting date is equated to the field date filter. We are saying that this posting date of this customer will filter to whatever we'll specify in our date filter field here. That's why we have said the posting date is not, we are equating it to whatever value will be filtered in the date filter. So while the system is populating the sum, it will look at the posting date to see the date filter that is there in the posting date in that field. We are done with that, and we'll also add a field. It will be field number 6, and this will be the customer balance, and it will be a decimal also. Okay, why don't I use the snippet? So the field class again will be the flow field, but again the calc formula will say it's the sum of the detailed customer ledger entry, where we are adding the amount. Remember, we are only adding the amount, and remember here we are not negating this amount, we're just adding it, the amount. The accountants, if you want us to use the negative sign, because we only want maybe to see, if you want to revise the sign, you can do that, just adding a minus on this, but for now we are not doing that. We are just getting the sum as it is. So the detailed, where now here we'll start with the posting date. It's the field what? Date filter. And again, and we'll have, what else are we having? And the, what else will be here? The next thing will be the customer number is the field customer number. What did we call customer number? So in our other flow filter here of customer number, which has a table relation for customer, in the customer balance it will be affected by not only the posting date and the date filter, it will also be affected by the customer number, which will filter to that particular customer number. Yes, so that's it for our table. We now need to see the results in action. We'll create a page to display this information. The page will be, I don't know that, let me just use the T page. It will be a list page. We only need a list page, so 5107 I believe hasn't been used, and then we'll still call it the field class page, and it's a list page. The source table is the field class table, and we have the name, which will give us the entry number. The name source here will say the entry number. That's it for us. And in the new version, we need to specify that it's the rec. So which other field can be specified here? You see, we only have the balance, because the balance can be displayed, because yeah, it's a flow field. We can also display the customer number and the customer balance. No, we can't display the customer. A flow filter, it's not advisable to display it, because we need it to add records. Customer balance, and then another field that we need to display here will be the net balance. The net balance, I think the net balance should be just after the balance. We could probably display the customer. No, this is what we need. and that's it for this display. Once we display, now we can set this page as the default page that will open when we run our application, and after that we will compile and start the application with debugging. It will open for us that default page that we have created. Here is the page. We only have entry number, balance, net balance, and customer balance. So we want entry number 1 to populate. So when entry number 1 populates, you can see automatically we get, yes, balance is this is the total balance of the customer ledger entry, detailed customer ledger entry. This is the net balance of detailed customer ledger entry, and this is the customer balance. You may be wondering, oh, why is there no difference in these fields? So we'll click on this filter pen, and here there is filter list by, and here there is filter totals by. We are concerned with the totals filter by. So the first one, we will add the date filter. Okay, so let's just do .t. T means today. So on entering, you can see the net balance has reset itself to 0 and the customer balance to 0, because up to today there is no entry that has been posted. The entry has been posted on a later date. Yes, so that's why we have 0 there. Let me remove it, and the balance has populated back. Let me add another filter with customer number, and for instance, if I only specify this furnishing, you see the customer balance has gone down. This total does not have the filter because we have filtered to this particular customer and we have been able to get this balance. Okay, if I change it to a different customer here, you see this customer does not have any entry, any postings, and what else? Somebody's okay. These customers don't have postings. Okay, no problem. I'll go back to my furnishing. There's a customer here. Yeah, this customer should have some entries. So then we can use this date filter here. So on this date, when I put the filter, it filters to that particular date, and this customer does not have entries. What if I say t dot two dots to mean from today onwards? From today onwards, this customer, they have the same balance and this is the same balance. Unless I get, what is the range of my entries? Let me click on this entry. So they start from 31st of December 2022. So what if I only specify this one date as the date filter, 31st of December 2022, 31/12/22, and enter. You see, this customer does not have any entry there, but the net balance has changed because the postings on this date signify, or they indicate, that we only have entries amounting to this particular balance. Remember, in the balance we did not specify any filter in our calc formula in the balance, so the balance does not change regardless of whichever filters are put here. This balance does not change. So if you enter, you key in your balance and you don't specify the date filter and you expect it to miraculously update itself, it won't do it. So it's so important to make sure that the date filter has been specified appropriately. And when you're using the code, for instance, and you want to get a date filter, if you call this balance, even if you have specified the date filter, nothing will happen. No change will happen. You need to go to the particular net balance. You need to know the field that has a net balance, and we can go to the use case of this in our application. And in our application, it is on the chart of accounts. Where is the chart of accounts? Account, chart of, yes. In the chart of accounts, we also have that. When we add the filter totals by, you can say we have all these flow filters. When you specify that filter and add this to .t, you can see the net change will be different from the balance. For this it's okay, but you see the net change and the balance is different, meaning the balance does not have any filter, but this net change is the one that is pegged, or the field that was defined with the date filter. So that is how we use okay, we use flow filters and what are these called? I almost forgot. That is how we use these fields. Come on, how can I forget it when I'm the flow fields and the flow filters in Business Central. They really help us easily and get detailed values and analysis of calculations, sums with filters and all that. But you need to understand which field has a filter, which one to use at what time. If it doesn't have a filter, make sure you know that it will just give you the whole balance, like this one has done to me, like the way we have this balance here. And if it doesn't have a filter specified, it will not give you any filter. For that, please, if you haven't understood, you can leave something in the comment, and I will see you in the next video. Stay tuned.